yesterday, the Maimer Chazal of Chilazin Zeh, oleh echad le70 shana. It's mevur that it can't necessarily be kipshute al kopanim, that you cannot get it any other time but during this 70-year period, this cycle. And it only comes every 70 years, and you have to get enough you have to get enough tzeva from that kufa for the next 70 years. It is before in the Gemara that Nebuzaradon, after the Churban Bayis, he left over min hayoyvim, he left over tzayadei chilazim. And we saw midrashim that there were people that made their parnasa from being tzayadei. They trapped the chilazim, they fished the chilazim. So apparently it was always available. Except vice that normally it wasn't something that was so easy to trap. Had to put some effort in. Once every 70 years, it came in a tremendous abundance. That was only in a pattern of every 70 years. Now, I know if we're going to... We painted many herrings green already, but I think we could... I saw brought down from two places. One it brings it down, the Shem Rav Tavger himself. One it brings it down from his organization. This is the way that they printed the ptil, and they said the following: that they feel that the Murex very much stems with oleh echad le tkufas man. However, our Gemara Taka says it's oleh echad le70 shana. But there's a brais in the Techeles FD we mentioned that says that it's oleh echad le70 shana, once every seven years. So he says that if you look in the writings of Pliny the Elder, who was a historian in the time towards the end of Bayesheni, he writes about, so assuming he writes about the Murex, it's not clear, and he writes about many others together, but assuming that he is referring to the Murex, he says a very interesting thing. He says that there's a cycle as to when the best time to trap them is. And he gives a svar over there. He says that the best time to trap these Murexes are Yemei Tishrei in the spring, and Yemei Nisan and Yemei Tishrei. So he says, these are 7 months apart from each other. From Nisan until Tishrei is 7 months. It means every 7 months you're going to trap them, because that's when they reproduce again. So he says the word shana doesn't necessarily have to be a year. Shana could mean a sevenfold, to be shana, to go over. So he says that the sevenfold, the seven chazara of the 7 times, is really 7 1 months. And therefore, once every 7 months, if you trap them, that's the optimal time to get them. And that's what Chazal means, that it's oleh echad le70 echad le70 shanim. That's one mahalach in fitting in the Murex. The Levush Aaron, which written by Choshvi Yeshivalite, and they bring down a different mahalach. They say no, echad le70 shana means literally, came up echad le70 shana. However, there's a Radbaz, very interesting Radbaz, in Shuvas Radbaz, and in the Radbaz they say it's mevur, that this whole inyan of oleh echad le70 shana was basically a nes, and that nes only happened until after Churban Bayis Rishon. Once the first base of Mikdash was destroyed, this nest that the Rebbeinu Shalom did wasn't existent anymore, and therefore today we don't have it. Today you have to go and be tzadit. You have to go into the waters and get it, because that's Chazal meant oleh echad le70 shana meant only in the time of the Bayis Rishon. Now it's a little bit difficult. Besides that, Radbaz himself will have to get to, but. I mean, this is brought down in Gemara as one of the Simonim in a Braisa. It's brought down in Rishonim. Some of them bring it down in Halacha. I mean, to say that Chazal brought it down but really was non-existent anymore, but it was a characteristic of some sort of pattern or something that happened only in the time of Bayis Rishon, it's shtickle schwer to say. And second of all, not necessarily a kasha, but there were many writers, for instance Aristotle, who wrote extensively about the murex, all about when did this and when that and how it does and how often. And he writes every prat, and he lived in the time of the Bayis Rishon. And to say that he wrote so much about it and to not have mentioned that there was mamish a nest that once every 70 years mamish came up by the millions and had to, if it was the murex, in order to make a difference in price, it would have to come up mamish the millions, maybe the billions. It's a shtickle pella, maybe not so pleadik. I'm saying Aristotle, the Ma'aser Kosayf, lived in Greece, never came to Eretz Yisrael, but there were many writers, historians that lived in Eretz Yisrael, that were around Eretz Yisrael at the time. They also wrote about these inyanim, and not one zecher that the murex has it. Okay, I'm saying it's not necessarily a kasha, but it's a shtickle aura that if this really happened only in the time of the Bayis Rishon and Al Pi Nes, should have been maybe mentioned. But the Kushtan Shol Dvarim, the Radbaz is very interessant. The Gemara says in Megillah that after Rebbeinu Shalom gave out each nachla, each chelik to each one of the shvatim, so Zvulun came to the Rebbeinu Shalom with the time. Rebbeinu Shalom, la'achai nasatolem sados ukramim. All my brothers got fields and vineyards. V'lino sato harimu gvayis. You gave mountains and hills. La'achai nasatolem arotzis. You gave them land. V'lino sato yamim v'naharais. Omar loy. So the Rebbeinu Shalom said to Zvulun, Kulon tricham l'cha al yidei chilazim. Don't worry, you'll make your parnasa. Everybody will need you when it comes to the chilazim. Sfunei tvunei chayil, which is a bracha by Zvulun. So Zvulun said to the Rebbeinu Shalom, that means that the Rebbeinu Shalom told you can have an abundance of chilazim in your chaylik. So he said, but who's gonna know? People are gonna walk off with it. They're not gonna pay me for it necessarily. Mimoy dieni al zay. So I says, lasis li damim. So the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, don't worry, if they're gonna take it, shaloi b'rshus, in itol shava prute b'loi damim, tiskalkel hatzviya. They won't be matzliach with their dying process. You have nothing to worry about. You're going to have the chilaz. They're going to have to come to you, and they'll have to pay you for it, and you'll make a fortune. So the shoyel asked the Radbaz, doesn't understand something. He understood in this Gemara that the chilazin was miyuchid in the chelik of Zvulun. That's the only place in the world that you could get it. And he asked him that we know that the Seidah in the Mishkan was for what purpose were there Seidah in the Mishkan? Gemara says that the Kaisher, there were the Tzayadei Chilazim, those who trapped the Chilazim, they had to do Ma'aset Seidah, they had to do Kaisher, we'll see. So he says that means that in the Mishkan they used the Chilazim, and how did they get the Chilazim? If the Chilazim is in the Chelik of Zvulun, so does that mean that they were at Har Sinai, they were building the Mishkan, they sent people to the chelik of Zvulun in Eretz Yisrael to get out the chilazim? It was bothering him how that's. He brings down v'chi efshar haya lovely Eretz Yisrael at Saidai. Did they come and travel to Eretz Yisrael before they built the Mishkan to trap the chilazim? So the Radbaz over here says tshuva. First he tells him, it's really also matzah. You can trap it if you want to go with an effort. You could go into the yam. Uvechelkei shel Zvulun. The fact that the Gemara says that it came b'chelkei shel Zvulun or yo'oila me'elav into the chelik of Zvulun, sort of al piderach neis. He was zeicher that the Rebbeinu Shalom brought it there me'elav. They didn't have to go to the yam. As a matter of fact, we'll see Zvulun never got a chelik by the yam. He was locked in by land. He had no chelik b'chlal by the yam. But hoyoyla me'elav min hayam ela yabosha v'yu malaktim moisid. The Pasha picked it up. The achas shegolu Yisrael, but once Kaisar went into Golus after Churban Bayis Rishon loy hoyoyla, it stopped coming up. This nest stopped happening. The Hishan of Uzaradon midalas ha'om. He says you see from the fact that the Uzaradon left over people, so you see that Vice said the nest didn't happen on a daily, didn't happen in the Chelik of Zvulun, or else you wouldn't have to have these Tzayadei Chilazim. V'amru Chazal yu Tzadei Chilazim. Mashma, so you tzrichim l'tzaydis. You see, after the Churban Bayis Rishon, they had to do tzayda, they had to trap it, they had to fish it. So he says that nest that happened was only for the Chelik of Zvulun. Mainly he says by the same thing by the Mishkan, it wasn't a problem. He says just like it was you find it in the Yam, you can find it in the Yam Suf also. The Chilazim showed up in the Yam Suf also. He says it was a stone's throw from our Sinai to the Yam Suf, wasn't far, and they sent people to the Yam Suf and they got it, which is also the Meir that you'll never find today in Murex in the Yam Suf. There was no Zecher, no Remez, no mention of anywhere, any time that there was, but Akopanim, the Radbaz says that the Chilazim was able to be found in the Yam Suf, and the fact that it was in Chelik Zvulun that you mentioned, it sounds like it was only Chelik Zvulun, it was only in Chelik Zvulun, but it means that Zvulun had it very accessible over there. The Rebbeinu Shalom brought it there, Keseder. So they bring a raya from here that you see that this Chiddush of oleh that used to come by itself, that which they understand means once every 70 years, that was only done until the end of Churban Bayis Rishon. But once the Churban happened, this phenomenon of this cycle of 70 years stopped to exist. And so Mameli says today you're not going to find it. But at that time it was. But clearly the way we saw the Radbaz inside, that's not pshat in the Radbaz. Radbaz never refers to the echad mishivim shana. That wasn't the greatest thing that Zvulun got, that once every 70 years he was oleh for him and he had easy access to it. That's not b'chal. He never mentions the word echad mishivim shana. He mentions oleh, he says that it was oleh for them, which means kipshutai, when you look at the Radbaz himself, the Shevet Zvulun had the schus, and the Rebbeinu Shalom gave them the bracha that keseder in their chelik was oleh al pines maybe, it was oleh liyabosha, and all they had to be is malakit and sell it and make money on it. He says after the Vuzaradon, after the Churban Bayis Rishon, so then apparently the Vuzaradon realized that stopped to happen. He didn't wait 70 years to see that it's going to stop happening, because it was a natural everyday occurrence in chelik Zvulun, and it stopped happening. So at that point he went and he says, okay, so now the only option is to go to the Yam. To take out from this Gemara, to take out from this Radbaz, that the member of Chazal of Oyel Meshivim Shana, it's mevur in the Radbaz, that was only a nest that happened until the end of Churban Bayis Rishon. But Akopanim, that's what they want to come out. They say that it's the Murex, and the fact that it's Oyel Echad Meshivim Shana is something that once happened, and after now the Churban Bayis Rishon, it doesn't happen anymore, and now you can get it in the Yam like they do today.